1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk, coming to you from Nassau Community College at 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on nccradio.org. nccradio.org, tell your friends and your neighbors. You can see us, you can watch us, you can see us on everything, on the radio, on Facebook. Of course, this program is later archived on Spreaker.com. This program is repeated on Sundays, 11 p.m. So tell your friends, if you miss it in the morning, you can get us at the night. So hi there, everybody. My name is, you got it. Give me an R, give me an A, give me a B, Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And of course, this all depends on when you are listening and watching us. Gewalt. When I say watching, you know what I'm talking about? I'm saying you can go to Facebook Live as well on WHPC's page or my own page at Facebook.com, Anshul Perl. So hello, you know my jingle. Hello on the radio, hello online, and hello to the world. As today we discuss difficult topics under difficult times. Let's begin by saying good morning to Mike Panis. He's joining us. Richard D. Rottenberg. And cheer up. Haha, that's right. We got to cheer up, my friends. So, let's begin on a general topic that relates to the world situation. How do we ever really know who we are? Why we do the things that we do? Why we make the decisions that we make? As children, we are raised in an environment where choices are made for us. And our specific circumstances and surroundings often determine how our lives are lived. Wouldn't you agree? And as we grow older, we gain more independence and freedom. We are given more responsibility. We have more say in different matters. And at a certain age, we leave our homes, where we are finally on our own and where we determine how we will live. Yet there's always a question as to how we come to these decisions that we do in life. If we follow in the ways that we were raised, then we have to wonder if we really chose this for ourselves, or if we are doing this because it is what we know and what we are comfortable with. On the other hand, if we rebel against our upbringing and do the opposite, then the question still remains. Are we doing what we feel is right, or are we just not doing things the way we were taught? This lifelong process of figuring out who we are and who we want to be is what this past weekend's portion reminds us of. Lech Lecha. There is a Hasidic concept that we should live with the times, meaning that each Torah portion read each weekend and throughout the week, we can actually need to find ourselves, our own lives in those very words. The Torah, when properly learned, actually should unveil our personal autobiography. And if we read it properly, we can find that every subject presented this week speaks deeply to the current, very difficult subject and situations going on in the land of Israel. So, what do we learn from Abraham? Abraham is a rebel, and from a very young age. But he was a rebel with a cause. The Medrash teaches us that as a small child he was sent to a cave to solitary confinement, where he spent 3 years. When he emerged, he knew Hebrew, and he knew that there was a God, the creator of the world. He came out knowing who he was and what he believed, and he began a lifelong process of breaking the idols in the world around him. How did he learn when there was no one to teach him? something that is lacking today, my friends. Do you know how he learnt without no one to teach him? He looked within. He didn't spend time destroying others. He looked within. He read his own soul. It is said that when the whole world was on one side, on Aver Echad, Abraham was on the other side, Aver Sheni, as we will explain. It is this very word, Aver, that the term for Hebrews, Ivri, comes from. For as a Jewish people, we are commanded to follow the Torah and live according to its ways, even if the whole world is against us. That is why a convert of Judaism is called the son or the daughter of Abraham. For a convert has the greatest test of all. The convert is the potential Jewish soul that has been born to non-Jewish parents. The convert is the one who has to stand on the other side to break away from how he or she was raised, educated, and brought up to believe, and say, no matter what you think, I know my soul. I am who I am. Yet, it is not only the righteous convert, but every one of us that needs to do this as well. Every one of us must look at him or herself and ask the question, a question that's so desperately needed today. Who am I? What do I believe? Am I only reacting with my heart? Or do I think about the situation? If I see something I don't like on television, a picture, a report, do I suddenly fall into line? Or do I have my own personality? Have I taken time out to really investigate the issue, the subject? Who am I? What do I believe? For we are not intended to be robots. We must do, but we must also know and understand. Judaism is not only about practicing, it is about living. The Torah portion begins the following. As we say good morning to Laura May, Bob Abramson, Gina Brandonston, Dr. Eitan Kilshevsky, thank you, Jonathan Wolf, and to everybody out there in the radio land. The Torah says, go for yourself from your land, from the place that you were born, and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. Interestingly, in this week's portion, we have so many references to the extraordinary basis of why the Jewish Holy Land belongs to the Jewish people. According to the Zohar, the words Lech Lecha, which constitute the name of the Torah portion, are indeed its opening verse, do not only mean Lech Lecha, go for yourself, but simultaneously means Lech Lecha, go to yourself. And how do we go to ourselves to discover who we truly are? Well, it goes on. We need to leave our land, our birthplace, and our father's home. This teaches us that in order to really know ourselves, we must temporarily distance ourselves from the influences of those around us. This doesn't mean that we need to physically move or go anywhere, though for some that may be part of the process. But spiritually and emotionally, we need to meet ourselves all over again. So we must leave our land, society at large, the culture, the socioeconomic pressures. We need to stop worrying about what the world wants from us and start looking within, to our own soul, to know what we want from ourselves, what our Creator wants from us. But that is not enough. We must go forth from where we were born, from our more direct surroundings, from those whom we were raised with, our school systems, our communities, our friends and extended family, or perhaps even the hatred that we were brought up with. We must not allow their influences to get in the way of learning who we are, who we truly are meant to be. And then hardest, but just as essential, we must go from our Father's home. We must recognize that as much as we may want to live in the very path that we were raised, we must choose it for ourselves. We must think for ourselves. We must investigate and see the larger picture on whatever we are facing. We must take ownership of this direction. It is then, and only then, that the new land is shown to us. And that is our potential, our possibilities, and the world that awaits us. It's only then that we can progress, for we cannot move forward until we truly know who we are. So much time is spent bashing others, putting other people down, doing terrible things. It would be so much more helpful for mankind, for everybody to stop for a moment and start thinking about themselves. It's much easier to put someone else down. It's much harder to look in the mirror. This is how we lech lecha. We go from ourselves back to ourselves. And we do this as Ivrim. Ivrim, as I said, why was Abraham called Ivri? The term used today for Hebrew or Jews, because he was willing to stand on the other side from the rest of the world as those who will pursue truth and righteousness, even when popular view may greatly differ. The more we break those idols in our own world and the world around us, the stronger we can become. This is what Abraham, everyone claims the Abrahamic founding father. Well, this is what Abraham teaches us. This is what it means to be who we are. And that is to swim against the current, to reveal our godly soul and our unique missions in this world. When we go from ourselves to discover and reveal our true essence. Good morning to Gina Marie, to Stephen Epstein, who is the big Ashrei man of the South Shore. Candy Rosen, who is reporting from Denver that it's snowing over there. Wow. It seems like the ultimate codependent relationship. Let me explain. In this week's Torah portion, we're introduced to a shadowy character named Lot. L-O-T. He was Abraham's nephew. Through his relationship with Abraham, Lot grows wealthy and powerful. And that's what starts the rift between them. Abraham is always careful to muzzle his cattle when passing through the fields of others. Lot's shepherds let his animals graze wherever they please. Their argument is that God has promised to give the land of Canaan to Abraham, and Abraham has no children, so it will all go to Lot. Therefore, they felt, that is the shepherds of Lot, that they justified in letting the animals loose in anyone's field. To Abraham, this is utterly unacceptable. Although the Holy Land was promised to his descendants, he has not taken possession, and therefore he had no rights to his neighbor's fields. In any case, Lot is not the ultimate heir, as we all know. To make matters worse, Lot resembles Abraham physically. He looked like him, looked like his uncle. So his behavior reflected negatively on Abraham as well. Finally, Abraham issues an ultimatum. Please, let us go our separate ways. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left. For Lot, this should have been an opportunity for self-reflection, to improve his ways and not lose his relationship with his revered uncle Abraham. Instead, Lot agrees to part and sets up a house among the most depraved people then in existence, the residents of Sodom. Not long afterwards, 4 strong kings pick a battle with 5 weak kings, including the king of Sodom, and they subdue the population. After 12 years of subjugation, the 5 kings now rebel. War breaks out, and Lot is taken prisoner. He's basically abducted, kidnapped. When Abraham hears the news, he immediately swings into action and personally goes into battle to rescue Lot. And I agree with the postings. We see history is repeating itself. At this point, does Lot gratefully, meekly return to Abraham's court? He does not. He continues living with the corrupt Sodomites and even becomes a leader amongst them. Eventually, matters come to a head, and the evil of Sodom reaches the heavens. God comes to a verdict. The city of Sodom must be destroyed. God shares the news with his trusted servant Abraham, who proceeds to pray on behalf of the people of Sodom. He's unable to find even a quorum of righteous people in whose memory the city could have been saved. But Lot, at least, is spared the calamity. When the angels appear to rescue Lot, he's none too eager to join them. The angels have to drag him away, and he escapes with his life only moments before the city is destroyed. The final straw is when Lot's daughters awaken to the destruction around them and assume that they're the only ones left. So they get their father drunk, and they become pregnant from him. News soon spreads of Lot's incestuous relationship with his daughters. And, as the commentaries tell us, Abraham is forced to move away in shame. The common thread in this saga is that Abraham is repeatedly disappointed and humiliated by the behavior of his nephew. Yet he bails him out time and time again. Abraham was a leader, a highly motivational person, and it must have pained him greatly not to be able to exert more influence on his nephew. But Lot was his own person who made his own decisions. Why did Abraham not simply let him live with the consequences? Why did Abraham not make a complete, clean break from this Lot? Eventually he showed up in Brooklyn, and they called it New Lot's Avenue. Why did he keep swooping in to save Lot from himself? Was it classic codependency? Or was there another dynamic at play? And I deeply believe, my friends, that there is a very, very deep dynamic at play in the world stage today. Perhaps Abraham saw potential in Lot and kept trying to bring it to the fore. Hasidic teachings explain that Lot represents the part of the mind that is uncouth and unrefined. It's the part that behaves unpredictably, sometimes shamefully, the part that gets us into scrapes time and time again, the part that can drag us into the most desolate, degraded places, our personal Sodom. We try to distance ourselves, but can never quite escape from our Lot. And perhaps, on some level, we don't want to. And this is something that Abraham bequested to us, his descendants. We will never give up on our Lot, whether it's a wayward child, an annoying neighbor, or ourselves. We don't give up because even in the most unrefined and embarrassing person has potential waiting to be discovered. Lot's 2 daughters produced 2 sons, who grew into 2 mighty nations, Moab and Ammon. From Moab descended the famous convert, who became the great-grandmother of King David. From Ammon descended Naamah, the wife of King Solomon, and the mother of his firstborn son and heir, Rehoboam, Yerovam in Hebrew. Therefore, the lineage of the dynasty of David, and by extension Mashiach, comes through Lot. Abraham foresaw that Lot would be the forebearer of King David and Mashiach. As the verse tells us, I found my servant David. Medrash tells us, what did he find? Where did he find him? He found him in Sodom, no less. The legacy of Lot is that no circumstance in life is so low or so depraved that no good can come from it. Abraham's rescue of Lot empowers us to rescue ourselves and each other from the pits of Sodom as many times as it takes, until we refined our lot to the utmost, and the world is finally ready for Mashiach. I'd like to say thank you to everybody listening. And one gentleman wrote to me a beautiful letter this week, an email, telling me how he loves to, and I thank you so much for that note, and everybody out there with their notes. I just want to revisit again, what is the meaning of the Hebrew word Hebrew? Hebrew language, the Hebrew people, Hebrew-speaking people. What's in a name? A Mercedes is called a Mercedes. Anybody know why? Because the car's inventor named it after his daughter. She was called Mercedes, and that's why they sell Mercedes. Nylon. At least according to one theory, you know why it's called nylon? It's an acronym for New York, New York, and Lon is for London. Why? These two cities were associated with the materials development of nylon. But neither name describes the essence of the object known by the name. Names are generally mere symbols used to identify one object or another, but not to describe the essence of a thing. Yet in the Holy Tongue, it is different. Every Hebrew name has an inner meaning and provides us with the insight into what is being described. Our sages even applied this to people's names and explained that parents, when they choose their children's names when they're born, have a semi-prophetic inspiration when they choose a child's name. And there's actually an interesting pecking order when a child, the first child who was born, who has the right? Who has the ultimate right or the decision over the name? Is it the mother? Is it the father? Then we go to the first to the mother, the second child to the father. But everybody agrees that the mother-in-laws and the father-in-laws and everybody else should stick out of it and not create family problems over names. It is squarely the responsibility and the blessing of the parents to choose the name. Therefore, a name change can have a profound impact on an individual, including changing his destiny. That's how powerful one's name is. For example, we only had it this weekend. There was an individual called Avram who was destined to remain childless. But then God said, your name is changed to Avraham, Abraham. The same person with a new name, and now he would be blessed with children who would give rise to nations. So the Jewish people are called, amongst other things, Hebrews. And the Jewish language is known by the same name, Hebrew. The Hebrews, or Hebrew language. If a name stems from a deeper root, then the very name Hebrew should give us an insight into who we are. What is the significance of the name? Well, the origin of this very title, again, is found in the Torah reading. It is the title by which the Torah describes the first Jewish person, Abraham, and has remained our title since. Check it out, chapter 14, sentence 13. Vayave hapalit, vayaged la'avram ho'ivri, which translates that the fugitive came and he told Avram, the Hebrew, and he was living in the plains of Mamre, etc., etc. Now, but what does this mean? What does the word Ivri mean? It says Avram Ho'ivri. Well, the Medrash steps in and gives us three views. It quotes three interpretations. Two of why he was called Ivri are based on geographical and chronological reasons. Then we have a third reason that's more related to the existential aspect. The Hebrew word we're talking about is Ivri, which literally means from the other side. So geographically, Abraham came from the other side of the river, which probably is reference to the Jordan River, since he came from Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. And where did he come? He went over to Canaan, current-day Israel, on the other side. So Ivri means, give it a geographical perspective. He came from one part of the world and he passed over to the other side. Good morning to David Klitnick and to Peter Hirschhorn. Also, he was also both physical and a spiritual heir of an individual called Aver. Who was Aver? Noach's great-great-grandson. Therefore the name Ivri, who individually, not only did he physically live, but also was a very highly spiritual individual. But again, why would this title become the eternal name of the Jewish people? Hebrews. Why to this very day are they still called today Ivrim, Hebrews? For this, our sages presents a third insight in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. And he says the following: because Abraham was on one side and the other world, and the entire world was on the other side. So what is the essence of the Jewish experience? What does it mean to be Jewish? That when you know something is true and you have the courage to stand up to the world and do the right thing. Abraham lived to see an entire world engaged in paganism, in which whimsical gods wanted fathers to burn children and to give kings the powers of gods. Murder, abuse, violence were the norm. But one individual refused to join. That was Abraham. He insisted that the world was a moral arena and was unified by a single moral calling to be good and to be kind to each other. If we claim our relationship with Abraham, this is who Abraham was. Imagine what it must have been to be like Abraham. Ponder the loneliness of having the entire world publicly against you, while you remain stalwart in your faith and cling tenaciously to that which you know is right. How did he do this? I'm about to share with you something, my friends, that put shivers through my body. Half a century ago, or more I should say, Adolf Eichmann was captured and taken from Argentina to an Israeli civilian court to answer for crimes against humanity and the Jewish people. Several decades earlier, Eichmann was a German Nazi lieutenant colonel. He was tasked with the responsibility of managing much of the logistics of the Holocaust. During Eichmann's cross-examination, the prosecution asked him if he considered himself guilty of the murder of millions of people. Eichmann's defense, that he was just following orders. Hello? Following orders. This was rejected. He was found guilty, and he was hung the following year. Inspired by this Eichmann trial, there was a Stanley Milgram, a social psychologist professor at Yale University. And he performed in 1961 a famous experiment aimed at answering the question of how much people follow others even if they know something is wrong. Does that sound familiar, my friends? Do I have to spell it out? Just a few years ago, in 2008, scientists have recreated the notorious Milgram experiment from 1961. In the newest experiment, volunteers were asked to act as teachers, and each was matched up with an unseen pupil who was given a word sequence to memorize and repeat. If the pupil got it wrong, the teacher was instructed to administer an electric shock. As the experiment continued, and as the students got the answers wrong, the shocks became more severe. Encouraged by an authority figure, the teachers continued administering shocks up to 150 volts. That was the cutoff point, even though the pupils were begging them to stop and screamed out. What was the results? 7 out of 10 volunteers continued to the maximum voltage. Like the original experiment, it was an elaborate hoax, my friends. The pupil was acting, and the screams were coming from a tape recorder. But like Professor Stanley Milgram before, the new team at Santa Clara University in California concluded that even in today's supposedly enlightened times, obedience to authority could override a person's moral beliefs. The findings were published in the American Psychologist. In the original study, carried out just after the trial of Nazi war criminal, the one I mentioned before, 4 out of 5 volunteers continued until 450 volts were administered, at which point a thud came from the next room. In Milgram's own words, the experiment went as follows. A simple procedure is devised for studying obedience. A person comes to the laboratory and in the context of a learning experience is told to give increasingly severe shocks to another person who, obviously, you get it, dear friends, who's actually an actor. The purpose of the experiment is to see how far a subject will proceed before refusing to comply with the experimenter's instructions. The experiment was originally performed on 40 test subjects. Each one of them was told by Milgram, the authority in the room, to ask questions and administer shocks by increments of 50 volts to the person in the other room whenever the person answered a question incorrectly. This was to persist until the voltage reached the full 450 volts. The person in the other room, who was not really getting shocked, acted as though each shock was getting increasingly worse by screaming, complaining about his heart condition. And then after the 300-volt administration, he went silent. Many of the test subjects, assuming that they were really inflicting pain or possibly death on the other man in the other room, felt bad and asked to quit the experiment. Milgram's scripted response was that he took personal responsibility for whatever happened, that he required them to continue until the experiment was completed. Of the 40 test subjects, 26 of them administered the full 450-volt shock. That is a 65% compliance rate. After the experiment was published, some astonished psychologists presumed that the experiment was done incorrectly, so they tried their own variations and found almost identical results. Variations of the experiment have been conducted across time and cultures to see if the results would change. My friends, the compliance rate averages around 2/3. 2/3. My friends, I share this with you. We can now appreciate why the first Abraham, first Jew, carries the title with his name, Ivri. Ivri, because Abraham was on one side, and the entire world was on the other side. He was alone in the world. He had left his father's home. He said goodbye to the entire world he knew before that, and began working to change the world all by himself. He didn't just follow what he was told to do. He worked to change the world all by himself, with no one but his wife behind him, backing him up. He was entirely alone in this world. People do not like those who rock the boat, who try to do things differently than everyone else. Therefore, Abraham was therefore despised, and powerful people wanted him dead. But Abraham embraced his aloneness and worked to bring the whole world over to his side, to the side of the master of the world. A person can be extremely intelligent, charming, talented, and bright. But if he always wants to fit in, to be just one of the guys, perhaps above average, but not outstanding, he will never change the world. That is why this has become the name, Ivrim, Hebrews. The first definition of being of this personality is to profess the ability to sometimes stand alone. The fact that the whole world follows a certain path does not make it true. Does not make it true. And if I know it is not true, I will not follow it. Conversely, people might look at me and do something and mock it, or shrug their shoulders in wonder, yet knowing and feeling this is true, we all march on. Therefore, we are called Hebrews, Ivrim, because we've inherited that legacy of Abraham. Being who we are is about standing up for what we believe is right, regardless of popular opinion and practice. And sometimes the greatest voices you have to contend with are really our own. We sometimes have to be alone, even within ourselves. Good morning to Stacy Hirsch Lambert. Let's continue. Let's continue, my friends. Under the heading, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is this world so unfair? Please don't tell me we can't understand God's ways. I'm sick of hearing that. I want an explanation. This is what came across our desk. Are you sure you want an explanation? Do you really want to know why the innocent suffer? I think not. You are far better off with the question than with an answer. You are bothered by the fact that people suffer undeservedly, as you should be. Any person with an ounce of moral sensitivity is outraged by the injustices of our world. Abraham, that we've been discussing, the first Jew Ask God, should the judge of the whole world not act fairly? Moses asked the same question. Why have you treated this people so badly? And today, we still ask that question. And we all have that question. Why, God? Why? But what if we found the answer? What if someone came along and gave us a satisfying explanation? What if the mystery were finally solved? What if we asked why and actually got an answer? If this ultimate question were answered, then we would be able to make peace with the suffering of innocence. And that is unthinkable. Worse than innocent people suffering is others watching their suffering unmoved. Hello? And that's exactly what would happen if we were to understand why innocents suffer. We would no longer be bothered by their cry. We would no longer feel their pain because we would understand why it is happening. Imagine you're in a hospital and you hear a woman screaming with pain. Outside a room, a family are standing around, chatting, all smiley and happy. You scream at them, "What's wrong with you? Can't you hear how much pain she's in?" They answer, "This is the delivery ward. She's having a baby." Of course, we are happy. When you have an explanation, pain doesn't seem so bad anymore. We can tolerate suffering when we know why it is happening. And so, if we could make sense of the innocent people suffering, if we could rationalize tragedies, then we could live with it. We would be able to hear the cries of sweet children in pain and not be horrified. We would tolerate seeing broken hearts and shattered lives, for we would be able to neatly explain them away. Our question would be answered, and we could move on. But as long as the pain of innocence remains a burning question, and there are people asking this question, we are bothered by its existence. And as long as we can't explain pain, we must alleviate it. If innocent people's suffering does not fit into our worldview, we must eradicate it. Rather than justifying their pain, we need to get rid of it. So keep asking the question, why do bad things happen to good people? But stop looking for answers. Stop formulating a response. Take your righteous anger and turn it into a force for doing good. Redirect your frustration with injustice and unfairness and channel it into a drive that fights injustice and unfairness. Let your outrage propel you into action. When you see innocent people suffering, help them. Combat the pain in the world with goodness. Alleviate suffering wherever you can. We don't want answers. We don't want explanations. We don't want closure. We want an end to suffering. And we dare not leave it up to God to alleviate suffering. He's waiting for us to do it. That's what we're here for. To continue this idea, why do some of the best die young? I don't understand, someone wrote. Why do good die young? A person wrote to us, I've lost a friend who's the best person I know. And I can think of plenty of not so good people who are living it up. Where is the justice? Can you make any sense of this upside down world? Let me tell you a story, if I may. A great debate once raged in heaven. It was over the most beautiful and precious new soul that God had created. The angels debated what should be done with this soul. One group of angels demanded that this soul remain in heaven. Hey, she is too pure, too holy to face the ugliness of the lowly world, they said. Who knows what will happen to her in a world of temptation and evil? This soul must stay with us right here. But the other group of angels said the exact opposite. Indeed, this soul glows with a unique divine glow. But for that very reason, she must go down to earth. For imagine the beauty and goodness this soul can bring to a dark world. What good is there in keeping such a soul in heaven? Let her descend to earth, shine a light there. So they argued back and forth, each side unshakable in their view, until it became clear that they could not resolve the issue themselves. They needed a higher authority. The case was brought before God Almighty. The angels stated that their arguments before the heavenly court. God listened to the two opinions. The first group of angels arguing that this unsoiled, unspoiled soul is too holy to be plunged into this lowly world. And the second side countered that the world needs such souls more than anything. And this was God's response. Indeed, it is sad to send such an immaculate soul into such a dark world. But this is my will. I only created darkness so souls like this one, can transform the darkness into light. The whole purpose of creation was that the lowly world be refined by the good deeds of mortal human beings. This cannot be achieved by souls in heaven. It can only be achieved through the souls in bodies. So even this most perfect, pure soul must descend to earth. This is what God says. The first group of angels who requested the soul to remain in heaven were disappointed, naturally. They couldn't fathom how such a spiritual being could be expected to survive in such a physical world. God turned to them and said, "As for your request to keep this soul up here, I will grant it partially. Though she must leave us and go down to earth, it will not be long before she will return to us. Her sojourn on earth will be brief. Such a brilliant soul would not need long to fulfill her mission. Soon she will be free to come back to heaven." God then turned to the second group and asked, "Are you satisfied with that? Do you accept that this soul can only be on earth for a limited time?" The angels replied, "Yes, we do. Every day that she is on earth is a blessing." So when a loved one passes away, we feel we have lost something precious. We are left with a gaping hole in our heart, and we often wonder why they were taken away from us. But at that same time, we can be grateful for the very fact that they were given to us in the first place. We are blessed to have such beautiful souls in our lives. The world is privileged to have such heavenly guests come down on earth. And even if it can be only for a short while, we will take whatever we can get. In time, all souls will be reunited. In the meantime, let us be thankful for the gift of every day. I'm pausing, my friends, because a lot of thoughts are going through my head. And we all know what is going through our minds at this time. Let me share another aspect. This came from a young boy, Zach, all of the age of 4 years old. And he asked, why doesn't God make a flood to take away all the yucky people like he did for Noah? Zach, I know you are a very good boy, but have you ever been naughty? Did you ever hurt your little brother or say something rude to your mom? God wants us to be good all the time, but we don't always get it right. Even good boys like yourself can sometimes do wrong things. It is a pity that we are naughty sometimes, but the most important thing is that we stop being naughty and say sorry. Then it's okay again, and we can start being good and doing what's right. If a flood would come every time someone did something bad, no one would get the chance to say sorry and change. So God has patience. He's waiting for the yucky people to realize that they are wrong and start to behave. In the times of Noah, God warned the people to change their ways 120 years before he brought the flood. By the way, we learned something interesting yesterday. The actual ark was not like one of those big cruise ships where it goes up to like a point. It was the length, the width, and the height was exactly like a long oblong. That meant that the bottom floor, which was for the garbage, had the same size as the middle floor for the animals. And thus, the top floor, where Noah and his family were also exactly the same size. So, think about this. The top floor had all this space just for Noah and his wife and his daughters and son-in-laws. But their space, this penthouse, so to speak, was as large as the second floor where the animals were all kept. And it was the same area as where the garbage was on the bottom floor. Why was that? Why was the top floor for mankind so big? Same size. Why was it built the same size as the middle and the bottom floor? So we learned something fascinating. Originally, the plan was that many more people were supposed to get onto that ark, as many as the animals. So there was an equal amount of space made for the human beings. Sadly, all that came up was Noah and his family. Another thing we learned, by putting the animals on the second floor, say the commentaries, we should be careful not to have our dogs and cats sleep in the same room. Welcome them, love them, care for them, but they should not be in the same room, definitely not in the bedrooms. This is what we learned from the ark, where clearly there was a place for human beings, there's a place for animals, and there's a place for garbage. In any case, that was just a side point. In the times of Noah, God warned the people to change their ways. 120 years before he brought the flood. The flood only happened because no one changed their bad ways in all that time. They even watched Noah building the ark, and he told them the flood was coming, but they still didn't start behaving themselves. From that story we learn how silly it is to keep on being yucky when we have the ability to change. God always gives us a chance, because even when we do something not so hot, he knows how good we can be. So I would say, important for me to share with you again, how can we be happy? I know we're always supposed to be happy and joyous. When we look at ourselves and life, it's not so good. And we don't see too much of a reason to be happy. On the contrary, we have many, many reasons to be miserable. So am I supposed to be able to just switch on the happiness at will? My friends, the answer is yes. We face some heavy challenges in life, and feelings of despair are understandable, but we can turn our situation around. Happiness is never beyond our reach. Why do I say that? What right do I have to say that? That's because happiness is the natural human state. Happiness does not come from the movies and the vacations. That's external stuff. Just look at a young child. Children don't need to learn strategies for positive living. They don't need a reason to be happy. They need a reason to be sad. If a child cries, we ask, "What's wrong?" If a child laughs and plays and dances around the room, we don't ask, "Hey, what's the big celebration all about? Why are you happy?" A child is happy by default. And if they aren't happy, there must be a reason, like they need to be changed, whatever. They are hungry or thirsty or tired or need attention or they may have just had the bris. But as long as nothing's wrong, a child is happy for no reason at all. Somewhere along the line, things change. We grow older. We become more demanding, more fachaded, harder to please, and we lose this childish contentment. As we become jaded by life's disappointments, we feel that we need a reason to be happy. So we start going on cruises and buying this, who knows what goes on. If you see an adult walking around with a big smile, you say, "Hey, what's wrong with you? What are you smiling about?" The difference is, a child is not self-conscious. They are free to be happy because they are not yet aware of themselves. It is only when we mature and become more self-aware that we also become more self-absorbed. We have worries and we have concerns, unfulfilled desires, unrealized dreams. None of us can honestly say we have it all, and we can always find reasons to be upset. But a child isn't bothered by what he or she is missing. So he does have it all. The child's lack of self-consciousness leaves her free to enjoy life and be happy. The more we are concerned with our own happiness, the further we are away from achieving it. As soon as we forget about what we need and instead focus on what we are needed for, the good we can do for others rather than the goods that we can do for ourselves, our childlike joy comes flowing back and we are happy. This is the focus of a joyous holiday, as in Purim. And we say L'chaim, just giving examples. We loosen our grips on ourselves and thank God for the opportunity. So even in the darkest of times, by becoming mission-focused rather than self-focused, we can access this inner joy. Happiness is not somewhere out there. It rests within, in that part of us that is forever young and forever giving. And that, of course, is our soul. Dear friends, have a wonderful, safe week. Good news, and be blessed with the redemption and good news all around the world. Have a great week.